worldwide icon and the best-selling chant artist of all time with over 300,000 records sold. Please welcome to the stage, Krishna Das.
Maharaj-ji looks at him and said, you have some medicine? Give it to me. So Ramdas thought he meant aspirin or something. So he takes out some aspirin. He said, nay, the yogi medicine. Yogi medicine? Okay, he must mean acid. So he took some acid, put it on his hand and held it out. And Maharaj-ji took it all, threw it in his mouth. That was enough acid to put a horse on the moon. Wow. It was like 4 full hits that Ramdas didn't even take a full hit, I don't think, at that point. So, and he sat around with Maharaj-ji all day and nothing happened. It didn't change him at all. Everybody's looking for a certain feeling. And you call it love, another person might call it something else. But it's the same thing they're looking for. You're looking for your own true nature. You're looking for your soul, which is love.
So I would love to start off with talking about your story with fame and success. I know you've talked a lot about that in the past as well. What has kept you balanced and humble throughout this journey? And what's like the advice you have for millennials nowadays with handling fame and success? Like how to go about this, especially in this age?
Success in what, in general? I mean, what are you referring to? Success in what way?
Just like that whole idea of how we're thriving for recognition and fame and wealth and just attention through social media or through our careers.
Well, the reality, you have to tune into reality. And the reality is that Maharaj is doing everything. I remember Mr. Tiwari, who was one of his great old devotees, when something good happened, he said, he could make a stone do it. He doesn't need us. He just, by his grace, he allows us to, but he's allowing me to do this. So, I mean, mostly people have the delusion that they're really doing something, and they're identified with the ego. And I'm the same way, but I was with him for about 2.5 years, and it's been over 50 years ago. So there's a kind of a ripening process that happens where, over time, the delusions that we have about life tend to fall away if we keep on the path. And the spiritual path is very interesting. It doesn't happen somewhere else. It's not about getting somewhere else or being someone else. It's about finding out who we are. And that means there's a tremendous importance to doing regular practice, spiritual practice. One has to calm one's mind. One has to open one's heart. One has to begin to overcome jealousy and pride and anger and fear. One has to work with these things. Otherwise, they keep pushing us around. So, regardless of what your position is in the world, what you do, what you don't do, spiritual practice is very important. And trying to open to that grace that is always flowing, but we don't pay attention. So all we have to do is try to remember to pay some attention, but that's very hard, very hard.
Yeah,
so,
and that's where the guru comes in.
Yeah, that's why spiritual practice is so important. A little bit, regularly. It has to be regular. You have to, we're born, we develop all these habits of thinking and what we think about ourselves and the stories that we tell ourselves all lifelong about ourselves. So if we're going to find a way to free ourselves of those things, we have to develop new habits. Otherwise, the old habits will just never die, and they keep pushing us around. So little by little, we have to begin to calm our minds down a little bit. That's a major thing. And in fact, Maharaj-ji said, if you bring your mind to one point, you'll see God. Mm-hmm. Now, seeing God and being God are two different things.
Yeah.
But, I'll settle for the first one for sure.
Yeah,
but even so, it's 50 years he said that. Is my mind at one point? No way. So it's your whole life has to be transformed. And you have to start developing a new way of thinking about yourself and life in general.
Yeah. And now let's go to your guru and my guru, Neem Karoli Baba, also known as Maharaj-ji. So the world knows him as a mystic and saint and enlightened being, but who is Maharaj-ji to you? How did you feel in his presence in the 70s?
Well, the immediate most powerful feeling that we had being with him was of being in the presence of unconditional love. Love that doesn't come and go. He never judged us. We were completely crazy. We come to India, we didn't know anything about Indian culture, about this or that. But he opened his doors to us and let us in and really, despite knowing everything about us, loved us unconditionally and loves us still unconditionally. And he loved everybody unconditionally. But each person had their own, it's almost like each individual had their own Maharaji. Because you could be in a room with 25 people, and then he would send everybody away. If you got together and told the story of what happened in that room, you would have 25 completely different stories. He said, what? He didn't say that, he said that. No, he didn't, he said that. What are you talking about? Because he used to say, I have the keys to the mind, he used to say. Whoa. And then he would tease us. He'd say, I could turn your minds against me. And he'd laugh. We'd say, Baba, don't do that. And he'd laugh. But really, he was fully aware and fully in control of what we were experiencing. And that's extraordinary. I mean, this is not just a guru. This is not just a saint. This is a great siddha. This is someone who, he doesn't teach, he just changes you. He just rearranges your stuff. And that's a very unique situation. So the feeling we had was being completely at home, completely accepted as who we are, as we are. We didn't have to wear the same clothes. We didn't have to act the same way. Each individual was getting what they needed all the time. It was so amazing, so amazing.
Yeah. And when I look at Maharaj-ji or read about him, and I guess most people, the first thing that comes up is that famous saying, all you need is love. And that's what you're talking about. And I feel that the current generation, and that includes me, we are so fixated on just achieving wealth, power, recognition, fame, success. We've really forgotten what we exactly need, and that's a cause of suffering, the absence of love. So
Sure.
it took me so long to realize this, because I'm 22 now, but I got admitted into USC in LA. And I don't know if you know about that school, but it was just so-called really fun. And there's frat parties and drugs and everything going on, and I thought that was happiness, and everyone was so happy. And yeah, basically, my mom took me out and she made me come to India. And oh God, sometimes I feel I've been in India for the last 4 years, even though I was born and brought up in the US. And I feel that Maharaj-ji saved me, because if I was there for those 4 years, God knows what would have happened to me. So it's like that false illusion of happiness you have. And I know you've experienced that too. I've read about you in your childhood. How do we get rid of that illusion? I know it's hard, but we need love. That is the truth. How do we realize that?
Well, really, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody's looking for a certain feeling. And you call it love, another person might call it something else. But it's the same thing they're looking for. You're looking for your own true nature. You're looking for your soul, which is love. You're looking for God, who is love. It's not like, so that love lives in everybody, but not everybody has the karmas to recognize that. You can't, you can lead a horse to water, they say, but unless the horse is thirsty, it won't drink. You can't make it drink. So people, which is why Buddha said, when he came out of the jungle, he said, the first truth of life is that there's always suffering involved. There's always dissatisfaction. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding that, understanding that, avoiding that fact. They take drugs, they pursue pleasure, they watch television their whole lives away. Whatever they do, and what they're really trying to do is avoid suffering. But they don't have the karmas to recognize that that's not the right way to avoid suffering. There's nothing, what we can do for other people is find the truth ourselves and manifest that as best we can in our lives and everybody we meet. You had a taste of that kind of life.
Yeah.
And you say, well, maybe I would have been lost in it. Maybe not. You never know. But at least you had a taste of it. So you know what that tastes like. And you know it's not enough. But there's a lot of people who just don't know that. Well, what are you going to do?
That's true. But that's where the question of like free will and destiny comes in, right? That do you have that free will?
Well, that's interesting.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, not some years ago, I was with Ma, Siddhi Ma. And I said to her, Ma, Maharaj-ji used to say to us, I have the keys to the mind. So I believe that. And so what that means to me is that I am where he has placed me. Not just physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, spiritually. I am where I'm supposed to be. So, Ma, what's the deal? I said, is it my effort is required, or is it all his doing, his grace? She said, Krishnadas, it's all grace, but you have to act like it isn't. That's really a phenomenal answer. Because on one level, the level of ultimate reality, it's all done. There's no time, there's nothing. All there is God all the time, and everybody's is it. But that's ultimate reality. We live in relative reality. In relative reality, there's time, there's birth, there's life, there's death, there's up and down, there's all kinds of things. In relative reality, we believe we are who we think we are. And so we should make effort to disentangle ourselves from those illusions. But on the other hand, where Maharaj-ji lives, no problema. There's nothing to do, nowhere to go. Everybody's God all the time. That's the reality. But we don't know that. So we have to recognize that it's all grace, but we have to act like it isn't, which means we have to make our effort. We have to cup our hands to catch the raindrops. Otherwise, nothing to drink.
Yeah. So, Krishnadas, now I want to go into, so I know a lot about this, but I want our viewers to know about some of Maharajji's miracles. So can you start off with the LSD story? Because that one's my favorite.
Well, the first part of the story is, of course, you know, that when Ramdas first came to India, one of the reasons he came was he wanted to find somebody who could tell him what LSD really is. I mean, it changed his life, it opened him up, it gave him great experiences, but nobody really knew what it was. So he came to India and he was giving it to people, and then time went on and circumstances happened and he met Maharaj-ji, and he had a very deep, life-changing experience the first day. And the second day when he came back, Maharaj-ji looks at him and said, you have some medicine? Give it to me. So Ramdas thought he meant aspirin or something. So he takes out some aspirin. He said, nay, the yogi medicine. The yogi medicine? Okay, he must mean acid. So he took some acid, put it on his hand and held it out. And Maharaj-ji took it all, threw it in his mouth. That was enough acid to put a horse on the moon. Wow. It was like 4 full hits that Ramdas didn't even take a full hit, I don't think, at that point. So, and he sat around with Maharaj-ji all day, and nothing happened. It didn't change him at all.
Yeah.
This was a really big thing for Ramdas, because here was somebody who was beyond the effects of acid.
Beyond
then he
the
came
body.
back to America. Yeah, then he came back to America. And he started telling stories of Maharaj-ji all the time. And when he would tell the acid story, sometimes people would say, oh, come on, he scammed you. He probably threw it over his shoulder. You know, nobody could take that much acid. So Ramdas didn't believe that, but there was a little bit of doubt.
Yeah.
So a few years later, I'm in India now, and Ramdas came after a while. I'd been there a few months when he showed up the second time. And we were on a pilgrimage in South India with Swami Muktananda. And we had been with Maharaj-ji, and he said, I'll meet you in Vrindavan when you finish with your pilgrimage. So now we were driving back up north from Ganesh Puri. And we came to Vrindavan, and Maharaj-ji, there's an incredible, miraculous story there. Can I tell it?
Yeah, yes, for sure.
Okay, so we got to the Vrindavan area very late at night. So instead of going to the temple, we stayed at the Krishna Janambhumi, which was halfway between Mathura and Vrindavan. And in the morning, we drove to the temple. Now, I was driving, and I missed the temple to turn to the temple. And as a result, we got stuck in the bazaar, you know, in the early morning with the push carts and the cows and the people and everything. So it took us about 20 minutes to get back to the temple. So we get to the temple, and we get out of the car, we go in, it's deserted. There's no one there.
Yeah.
And the chowkidar says, I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him in months. Nobody knows where he is. So we were really, oh my God, what are we going to do? You know, there were no cell phones. There was nothing. What are we going to do? How are we going to find him? All right, we'll drive to Delhi. Maybe somebody will know where he is there. We get in the car. I put the key in the ignition, and I'm just about to turn the key, and a little Fiat screeches to a halt right next to us. And Maharaji gets out of the passenger seat and walks into the temple, and he doesn't even look at us. He didn't even look at us. We went, what? And we went running in the temple, and we had the greatest time with him. We were with him for days. And so later that day, and so about 10 years later,
Yeah.
one of Maharaj's old devotees, Gurudat Sharma, says to me, do you remember that night, that day in Vrindavan when we arrived, Maharaj-ji arrived just as you were driving away? Yeah, he said, well, you may not remember, but I was in the car with him. I said, oh. And what happened was the night before they were in Lucknow or something like that. And all the devotees were asleep in the living room. Maharaj-ji came into the room in the middle of the night and tried to wake Gurudat Sharma up. But he couldn't wake him up. So he picks him up, throws him over his shoulder, takes him out, throws him in the back seat of the car, and they take off in the car in the middle of the night. And Gurudat woke up like, what's going on? Yeah. So Gurudat told me they drove as fast as they could possibly drive all night long. And just outside, and they didn't stop, just outside of Vrindavan, Maharaj says, Roko. So Gurudat thought it was a pee stop or something, right? But no, they just sat in the car for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, Maharaj says, Chalo. And again, they drove as fast as... He timed his arrival to be at the moment of our greatest despair. 1 second more, and I would have started that car and driven away.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
He did that on purpose. I mean,
Oh my God.
what? And Gurudat said, we drove fast all night long, all night. Maharaj kept saying to the driver, faster, faster. And then just outside of Vrindavan, stop for 20 minutes. That's the 20 minutes that we got lost in the bazaar because I missed the turn.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is like,
Okay.
I mean, our ordinary mind cannot even conceive
No.
this. Yeah, no.
If we were ripe, really spiritually ripe, a story like that would be it. We'd be finished. It'd be enough.
Yeah.
But we're not ripe. So later that day, we're sitting with Maharaji, and I'm sitting, Ramdas is sitting there, and I'm sitting right next to Ramdas. Maharaji looks at Ramdas and said, when you were in India last time, did you give me medicine? Yes. Oh. Did I take it? I think so. Oh. Got any more? Yes. Give it to me. So again, Ramdas takes like 3 or 4 major hits of acid, puts them, this time Maharaji went like this. He took a pill, he goes.
Okay. Because he knew Ramdas had the doubt in his mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Ramdas goes, oh my God, he knew I had this little bit of doubt. So then he takes the acid and he sits there, and then all of a sudden he takes his blanket up over his head, and then he opens it up like this and he goes, and he closes again, he goes, and Ramdas turned purple. I had never seen a purple human being before or after that moment, because he thought, oh my God, he didn't take the acid the first time. Now he's trying to prove to me that he could do it. I've killed my guru, what's gonna, oh my, you know. And the minute Ramdas thought that, Maharaj just dropped the whole thing, and he laughed.
Oh
And he
my
said,
God.
yogis have known about this for thousands of years. He said, nobody,
Yeah.
you know. And then we sat around all day, nothing, no change. Nothing.
Yeah, these Siddh saints like Ramana Maharishi, where, I mean, he was suffering of the bodily pain, but it didn't affect him because he was above the body and mind, right?
Yeah. But you know, when there's a story about Maharaj-ji, he was up in Haldwani, and all of a sudden he started like to cry. And he was saying, oh, he's in such agony. He's in so much agony. Bring me water, bring me some water. And they gave him a few spoonfuls of water. And he said, oh, he's suffering so much. India's losing such a saint, such a saint. And it was exactly the time that Ramana Maharshi left the body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh. That's because these people, I mean, they come in this incarnation lifetime to relieve the sufferings of others, right? I mean, that's
Yes,
their,
yeah, yeah, definitely. And to also show us that there's a path that we can walk, that there's a way to realize our deepest truth and our deepest nature, and there's a way to become a good human being. Because that's what it means. That's what we're talking about. These are the real human beings. We're just pretenders at this point.
yeah. And so I know that Maharaji's Miracles, I mean, like you said, if our mind was, spiritual mind was at right, that would have been enough, but it's not. So I was wondering if because I've heard stories of Maharaji being at two places at once. I don't know if could you talk a little bit about that? Because some people of us don't know about astral travel, but it's there, I know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I don't have a personal experience about that, but my Indian father, Mr. Tiwari, told me a story. He said that they were in Delhi, and the opening of the Delhi temple in Karoli was going to be the next day. And in the morning they were at the temple, and then Maharaji, I'm sorry. They were in Delhi, but they left Delhi and went up to Raniket, which is way up in the hills. And Maharaji did not go to the opening of the temple. So they were up in Raniket on the day of the temple opening, and Maharaji says to Tiwari, "Jello, let's go for a walk." So they walked out on one of the ridges of the mountains, and Maharaji says to Tiwari, "Sit down and meditate, face the Himalayas and meditate." So Tiwari was a great meditator. So he sat down, boom. And then he doesn't know how long he's gone because he's just in samadhi.
Yeah.
And then Maharaj says, "Hep, Jello, let's go back. You're wasting my time. I have so much to do. Come on." And they went back to the house. The next day, a party of people arrived from Delhi with prasad from the temple opening, from the Bandara. And they come in and they said, "We've come to bring Maharaji his prasad because he left before taking prasad and we wanted to bring it to him." And the people said, "What do you mean he left? What do you mean?" "Well, he was there in the morning and he left." "He wasn't there. He was here all day." "What do you mean he was here?" And then the guy from Delhi looks and he sees Tiwari and he says, "And he was there too."
Oh my God.
So not only had Maharaji gone, but he had brought Tiwari with him.
Oh my God, wow.
But Tiwari didn't know anything.
Yeah, he was in his trance and samadhi, right?
By the way, we've just finished making a movie, a small film about Tiwari called Brilliant Disguise. It'll be out very soon. He was a great yogi and he was one of the very great devotees of Maharaji.
Wow.
And it's a very beautiful little movie, yeah. It'll be out soon.
Seems like everyone who came under Maharaji's guidance, especially during that time, you, Ramdas.
He worked with individuals. Everyone he brought to, nobody just arrives there by chance. If you were there, he brought you. But he brought you there for a specific purpose, for your own karmas, to help you. It doesn't mean that everybody was going to do great things in the world. Everything, some people are just regular householders and living good lives, trying to live good lives. Only he knows what's going on, And everybody has their own role to play. And according to their own karmas and what Maharaji wants them to be doing, really, what it comes down to.
Yeah. But he knew what's best for each and every one. So that's
of course, he knew everything. He knew the past, the future, he knew the present, he knew everything. And he could rearrange it all if he wanted. But sometimes he would let karmas run out because it must have been in the long run, it must have been the best thing. I knew a couple that they asked Maharaj-ji to marry them. And Maharaj says, "Nay, Krishna Das will marry you." What? You know? So we did a little ceremony in front of Hanuman the next day, okay?
Yeah.
But they then went back to America. The woman got cancer. Their son died. The man had a heart and lung problem. He couldn't breathe, and he died. Now, the way I see it, by not marrying them, he was not going to change that flow.
Yeah.
That had to happen. And in the long run, it must be for the best. Because somebody like Maharaj can only do what's best for everybody. You know, it's not, it's impossible, because he's only here to do the best for all of us. So, as well as all the other great saints, they're only here for us. They don't need to be here for themselves. They're finished. But because we think we're suffering, they hang out for us, our sake. So by not marrying them, I just feel that he knew that in the long run it was the best thing for that karma to run out that way.
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing to deal with. I mean, I knew them, and I knew they suffered tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
No explanation.
Yeah, but he knows what's best. So
sure, and he's taking care of everybody.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Krishna Das, about your view on God. So I know that Maharaj-ji, he loved people from all religions, backgrounds, cultures. He loved Jesus, Buddha-ji. What do you imagine God is? How do you see God?
For me, Maharaj-ji is God. That's all I know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else. I know love because of him. I know what real love is because of him. And everything I know about or can feel about so-called spirituality, it comes from him, from being with him. For me, he's God. And what is God? God is unconditional love. Unconditional. It means loving everyone equally, not just your relatives, not only the people that are close to you, but your so-called enemies, but people in the street. When we have to develop that kind of kindness and compassion, because that's what God feels for everyone, because God lives in every being as their own true nature, not something else. God's looking out of your eyes, hearing through your ears, just the same God is listening through my ears and my eyes. There's only one of that, consciousness, pure being. Oh. And it's everywhere, in everyone, all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
And the practice that I do, the chanting of the names, these names are the names of that place within us, and they have the power to pull us into that beauty and love that lives within us. Or so they say.
Yeah, no, it's true. I know it is. That's beautiful. And the last question from my end, Katie, is that what's I know there's probably many, but what's the one advice you would like to give my generation, the youth who's growing up on how to live, how to try to at least get closer to that true self, the awareness, how?
It would be the same advice I give anyone. It would be, I would say, finding real love is possible. And one should not give up or sell oneself short. One should try to find that love everywhere and in oneself, and then learn how to treat other people the way you yourself would like to be treated. One should not give up. Don't give up. Don't sell yourself short. Everything is possible at any time. Even if the world looks like it's about to go down the toilet in 10 seconds, you can still find love. Because that's who we really are, underneath who we think we are. We are love. We are that. But it's not emotional love, it's not romantic love. It's, it's the space of the whole universe, the being.
Yeah.
So one has to do a little practice in order to calm the mind down. Otherwise, you just get bullied by your own stuff. So
it's that in spite type of love, not the ones where there's conditions based.
Yeah. But all we know is conditions, and all we, because that's what we know, that's what we want, and that's what we grab for. So as those conditioned things fall apart and drip, through our fingers, we should pay attention and recognize that that's not where it is. Mm-hmm. It's everywhere, all the time. We just have to look.
True. Yeah. Thank you so much for that beautiful answer, Krishnadas. And you don't know how much of an inspiration you are for people, the youth who want to pursue their dreams, but at the same time really understand the truth of who they are, the real meaning of why they're here, which is so much above materialism and these so-called passions. But thank you so, so much.